Welcome to Christ's Word, where everyday lives meet the light of God's Word. Here, we don't preach. We tell stories. Moments of doubt, turning points, quiet revelations, all woven with raw emotion and unshakable faith. You're not just listening to someone else's journey. You might just find your own reflection in it. And maybe, just maybe, by the end, you'll discover the answer you've been searching for. The room was dim, its walls cracked and weary, a faint smell of dampness in the air. A military jacket hung over the back of the chair, still stained with blood that had long since dried. He sat there, hunched forward, fingers trembling as they gripped a mug of cold coffee. His eyes were blank. Empty. Staring through the window as if someone, might appear from the past and give him reason to breathe again. He didn't have a name anymore. Not in this town. People didn't speak of him. He was the man who had been there, the place where war was the only language, and explosions the rhythm of every heartbeat. A siren howled in the distance. His body flinched. Just a siren, but to him, it was something else. He wrapped his arms around his head, teeth clenched. The war was over, they said. But no one told that to his memories. Once, they called him a hero. There were photographs, medals, speeches. Now, he was a burden. A broken man who woke screaming at night. People avoided his eyes, because they were afraid. Afraid of what he'd seen, and what might still live inside him. His wife couldn't take it anymore. She left. She didn't yell, didn't cry. Just a note on the table, "You're no longer the man I married." That night, he walked. No coat. No direction. Rain poured like heaven weeping for what earth had become. His old jacket clung to his frame like a memory refusing to let go. A small church stood near the edge of the road. The door creaked when he pushed it open. He stepped in, just to escape the rain. He didn't expect anyone to be there. But someone was. A man, elderly, sat near the altar, lighting a single candle. The flickering flame revealed wrinkles carved deep by time and sorrow. He looked up. Said nothing. Just, looked. It made him uncomfortable, being seen like that. He almost turned around. Almost walked away. But he didn't. "You're still carrying a war inside," the old man finally whispered. "And no one ever wins that war, son." He scoffed. "You don't know anything about war. About blood. About watching someone die because of what you did." "I know peace," the old man replied. "And I know it doesn't start out there. It begins inside." The words hit harder than bullets ever did. He didn't answer. Just turned and walked out into the rain. But that night, he couldn't sleep. He heard the words again and again. The next morning, he returned. The old man was there, lighting another candle. This time, he didn't speak until he reached into his coat and handed him a book. An old Bible. "Read this. You'll hear something only God can say to you." He took it. Not sure why. Maybe because the old man hadn't looked at him like a monster. Maybe because, for once, he hadn't been judged. He didn't open the book. Not right away. He still drank too much. Still snapped at strangers. Still froze whenever something loud broke the silence. But one night, in a nightmare, he saw a little girl. She stood in the middle of a battlefield, hands raised, light pouring from above. She wasn't afraid. She was pleading. "Stop fighting," she said. "Please, stop." He woke up gasping for air. When morning came, he opened the Bible. The first page had a handwritten note: "God never promised the storm wouldn't come. But he did promise to walk with you through it." Psalm 23 verse 4. And he began to read. Not like a believer. Like a man desperate to survive. But this isn't a miracle story, not the kind that turns around overnight. This is a story about a soul stolen by war, trying to take itself back. Not with bullets. Not with rage. But with faith. With forgiveness. With something he never thought he'd find again, peace. Because sometimes, the strongest survivor, is the one who chooses to put the weapon down first. Weeks later, he returned to the church. The old man was gone. Only a burnt-out candle remained. And a folded piece of paper on the seat where he used to sit. My part is done. Now it's time for you to begin your journey. He kept coming back to that church. It was quiet. No sermons, no songs, no judgment. Just silence. The kind of silence that lets you hear the things you've buried. Sometimes, he sat for hours with the Bible in his lap, open, unread, because it wasn't about the words just yet. It was about the waiting. About learning how to sit still without breaking apart. Outside those walls, the world moved fast. Too fast. People were busy trying to forget things. But he couldn't forget. The war had followed him home, hiding in everyday sounds, in the slamming of a door, the thump of a truck over a pothole, the way a voice could rise suddenly in an argument. Every day was a minefield. He tried therapy. Once. It lasted 2 sessions. The young counselor stared at him with kind eyes, but there was something missing. He hadn't seen death, hadn't felt blood dry under his fingernails. What could he possibly know? So he stopped talking. To people. To himself. Even to God. Until now. The church had become a quiet companion. A place where he didn't need to explain. Where nothing demanded an answer. Just his presence. But beyond the walls, his life was still falling apart. His name was still blacklisted in places he used to work. People crossed the street when they saw him coming. A few even whispered. And then there were the nights, always the nights. They didn't bring rest. They brought memories. Faces. Screams. Regrets. He would lie on the floor sometimes, arms wrapped around his head, whispering things like, "God, let me see the depth of your unchanging love." Or just help me. Sometimes it was nothing more than a breath, a desperate sound between sobs. That's when the memories started to change, not disappear, but shift. Not all of them were violent. Some were human. The boy he gave water to, even though command said not to stop. The woman who placed a rosary in his hand when they passed through her village. She couldn't speak English, but her eyes said, "Peace be with you." He remembered her. And then he remembered the day it all cracked. He'd just returned from his 3rd tour. The house was quiet. His son ran to him, 7 years old. But when he reached out to pick him up, the boy flinched. That moment. That single flinch. It shattered something in him. Not the war. Not the loss. That was the moment he knew the violence had made it home. It had walked in behind him like a shadow that wouldn't leave. He dropped to his knees, held the boy close, whispering apologies he didn't know how to make real. That memory haunted him more than any battlefield. Now, sitting in that same wooden pew, he stared at the cross hanging above the altar. He used to think it was just a symbol. A relic. Now, it was something else. Because if Jesus had carried that, had bled, had cried, had been betrayed, then maybe someone understood. Maybe God wasn't watching from a distance after all. Maybe he was closer than breath. Maybe he had scars too. The next day, he met someone. A man named Thomas. Not a pastor. Not a counselor. Just a guy who came to clean the church on Thursdays. They didn't talk much at first. But one afternoon, Thomas sat down beside him and said, "You're fighting something. I see it in your hands." He tried to laugh it off. Thomas didn't smile. I used to fight too, he said. Not with guns. With a bottle. Same battle, different weapon. They sat in silence again. Then Thomas pulled something from his coat pocket. A small wooden cross, worn at the edges. This got me through it, he said. Not because it fixed me. But because it reminded me I wasn't alone. He handed it to him. It felt warm. Not because of the wood, but because someone else had held it. Someone who had been broken, too. Someone who had survived. That night, he held it as he slept. And for the first time in months, no nightmares came. Only the sound of wind outside, and the whisper of a prayer he hadn't even realized he was saying, God, don't leave me in the dark I made. Show me the way back. He woke up before the sun. Not because of nightmares this time. Just, awake. Calm. He sat by the window for a long time, watching light bleed into the sky, the kind of soft, slow light that doesn't demand anything. It just arrives. And maybe that was grace, too, something that didn't come crashing in but quietly offered itself. The wooden cross still rested in his hand. He hadn't let go of it all night. His coffee was still bitter, still cheap, still lukewarm from the same old machine. But this morning, it didn't taste like survival. It just tasted like morning. That was something. He walked down the street, past shuttered stores and graffiti-stained alleys. Places he usually avoided. But this time, he walked through them like a man searching for something, not running from something. Outside the church, Thomas was sweeping the steps. They didn't say anything at first. But Thomas nodded, and he nodded back. And that small gesture, two men, both broken, both trying, meant more than 100 sermons. He sat in the back row. Opened the Bible again. This time, the words pulled him in. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God. He whispered it under his breath. Over and over. Like a mantra. Like a lifeline. Peacemakers. Not soldiers. Not avengers. Peacemakers. He closed his eyes and saw her again, the little girl in his dream. Arms raised, light behind her. Pleading. And in that moment, something inside him began to shift. Not dramatically. Not like a movie. Just a small turning, like a ship beginning to change direction. That night, he went home and opened the box he'd hidden in the back of the closet. Inside were medals. Photos. A watch given to him by a friend who didn't make it back. He took the watch out and stared at it for a long time. And then, he prayed. Not out loud. Not on his knees. Just a quiet, broken prayer. God. I don't know who I am without the war. But if you're still there, show me who I can become. He left the watch on the table. Unlocked the front door. Let air in. The next day, he went back to the church early. Thomas was already inside, sitting near the front. You ever think, he asked, voice low, that maybe the war isn't out there anymore? Maybe it's just, in here. He tapped his chest. Thomas nodded. That's where it always lives. Until you let something stronger move in. He didn't know what that meant. But he wanted to. Later that week, he walked past a playground. A group of kids were playing, shouting, laughing. And then, one of them fell. Hard. Without thinking, he stepped forward. Helped the boy up. Checked his knee. It wasn't serious. Just scraped. The boy looked up at him, frightened, unsure. So he smiled. And the boy smiled back. It was the smallest moment. But it felt like something sacred. That evening, he told Thomas what happened. You felt it, didn't you? Thomas said. That pull inside. That peace. He nodded slowly. I think. I think I want to know more, he said. About what this all means. About why I feel like something's waking up in me. Thomas didn't answer right away. Instead, he opened his Bible to the book of John. He pointed to the verse and let him read it for himself. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled and do not be afraid. Those words sat heavy on the page. But not like a burden. Like a promise. That night, he sat alone in his apartment. No TV. No distractions. Just silence. And prayer. God, if you're truly offering peace, if you can make a man like me clean, then I'm listening. I'm here. Show me. A knock came the next day. He didn't recognize the woman at first. Until she said his name. It was his wife. She looked thinner. Older. But her eyes were still kind. I heard you've been going to church, she said. He didn't speak. I'm not here to judge. I just wanted to see for myself. He opened the door. Let her in. They didn't talk about everything. Not yet. There were too many wounds for that. But they shared a meal. And laughter came, awkward at first, but real. When she left, she paused at the door. I don't know who you are right now, she said softly, but I think I'd like to find out. And he watched her walk away, not with bitterness. But with something else. Hope. Real hope. He looked down at the cross still in his pocket. And whispered, thank you. It didn't take long for the storm to return. Not the kind you could see coming on a radar. The kind that rises quietly in your chest, in your bones, when peace starts to grow, but the past refuses to die quietly. He had begun to feel something new, something like peace, yes, but peace doesn't erase pain. It only teaches you how to carry it differently. The nightmares came back one night. But this time, it wasn't war that haunted him. It was the sound of his own voice, shouting, blaming, hurting the people who had tried to love him. The war had taught him how to survive. But no one had taught him how to heal. And healing hurts. The next day at the church, he barely spoke. Sat still. Eyes down. Thomas noticed. You okay? He asked. He wanted to lie. But lies didn't work anymore. I'm scared, he said. I thought I was changing. I thought maybe this whole thing was real. But last night I almost smashed a mirror just because I saw myself in it. And I hated what I saw. Thomas leaned forward. You know what I see? He shook his head. I see a man who finally cares about what he's becoming. That hit him hard. Because it was true. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't trying to escape who he was. He was trying to become something more. But the world around him didn't change just because he did. He applied for work again. This time at a local shelter, wanted to do something with meaning. They reviewed his records. His military file. His psych evaluations. They told him no. We're not sure this is a good fit. He nodded, pretending not to care. But when he got home, he sat in the dark for hours. Didn't eat. Didn't pray. Just stared. The old him, the angry, bitter, reckless version, he could feel it scratching beneath the surface. It would be easy to go back. So easy. Later that week, while walking down the street, a man bumped into him. Didn't apologize. Just muttered something about crazy vets under his breath. And in that moment, something inside him cracked. He turned. Grabbed the man by the jacket. Pinned him against the wall. And then, he saw himself. In the man's terrified eyes. And he let go. Didn't say a word. Just walked away. Faster. Then slower. then stopped completely. He dropped to the curb, buried his face in his hands, and whispered, "God, is this who I still am?" He didn't hear an answer. But maybe peace doesn't always speak in words. Maybe it waits in choices. He walked back to the church that night. The door was open. Candlelight flickered like stars caught in glass. Thomas wasn't there. But someone else was. A woman. Young. Crying. He almost turned around, felt like he had no right to be there. No right to comfort anyone when he was barely holding himself together. But then, he sat beside her. Didn't ask what was wrong. Didn't offer advice. Just sat. And after a few minutes, she whispered, "Thank you." He nodded. And that's when he understood something he hadn't before. Peace wasn't loud. It didn't come in big moments or grand gestures. Sometimes, it was just sitting with someone in the dark. Saying nothing. And not leaving. He told Thomas about it the next day. Thomas smiled. "You didn't fail the test," he said. "You passed. Because you chose mercy over rage. Presence over power. That's what Jesus does, you know. He stays." But the tests weren't over. A few days later, his brother called. They hadn't spoken in years. Too much bad blood. Too many words said in anger and never taken back. "Dad's dying," his brother said. "He wants to see you." His father. The man who taught him toughness but never tenderness. Who called him weak the day he cried at his mother's funeral. Who never visited after he came back from the war. Who once said, "You should have died out there, at least then people would still respect you." That man wanted to see him. He almost said no. Almost hung up. But something in his chest whispered, "Blessed are the merciful." He didn't pack much. Just the cross. And the Bible. When he arrived at the hospital, his brother barely looked at him. 5 minutes, he said. That's all he's got left in him. He walked in. And there he was. Small. Frail. Not the monster he remembered. Just, a man. He sat beside him. Didn't speak at first. But then, the old man opened his eyes. And whispered, "You came." "I did. I wasn't a good father." He didn't argue. "I thought being hard made you strong." Still, he said nothing. "I was wrong." Then silence. A long, aching silence. And finally, he reached out. Took his father's hand. "It's okay," he said. "You can rest now." A single tear rolled down the old man's cheek. And he closed his eyes. For the last time. The funeral was quiet. No music. No long speeches. Just dirt and silence. His brother stood across from him, eyes red, arms crossed. They hadn't exchanged many words since the hospital. Maybe they wouldn't. Maybe that wasn't the point. After the final shovel of earth hit the casket, he stayed behind. Everyone else left. He stood there, staring at the name carved in stone. And he didn't feel anger anymore. Not really. Just sadness. Not for what was, but for what never had the chance to be. He whispered, "God, thank you for helping me come. Thank you for giving me the strength to forgive him, even when he never really knew how to love me." The wind stirred gently through the trees. It felt like a response. When he returned home, the apartment looked the same, but it didn't feel the same. Something had shifted. There was more light now. He sat down and opened the Bible again. It fell to a verse that caught his breath. "Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good." He read it again. Then again. It felt like a map. That night, he prayed differently. Not just for himself. He prayed for others. For the woman at the church. For the man he almost hit in the street. For his brother. And for soldiers still fighting wars, out there, and inside themselves. God, let me be someone who brings peace, not just someone who seeks it. The next morning, he walked to the shelter. Same place that had rejected him weeks earlier. He didn't go to ask for a job this time. He went to volunteer. The woman at the desk hesitated when she saw him. Then she looked at the form in his hand. No resume. Just one line, written in black ink, I'm here to serve, not to prove anything. She read it. Looked at him. Then nodded. Okay, she said. We could use help in the kitchen. He tied on the apron. Chopped onions. Cleaned counters. Took out trash. And it felt holy. No one cheered. No one noticed. But God did. He knew it. Over the next few weeks, he kept showing up. Sometimes just to sweep the floors. Sometimes to talk with a man detoxing from heroin. Sometimes to pray with a woman who had lost everything in a fire. Each time, he felt more alive. Not the kind of alive that comes from adrenaline. The kind that comes from obedience. From love in motion. One night, as he was closing up, he found a boy asleep outside the shelter door. Skinny. Shoes falling apart. He crouched down. Hey, you okay? The boy stirred. Eyes full of fear. Ready to run. Wait, I'm not here to hurt you. He handed him half a sandwich from his bag. The boy took it. They sat in silence. Then the boy whispered, You a pastor or something? He laughed softly. No. Just someone trying to be less broken. The boy nodded. Then leaned his head against the wall, chewing slowly. He offered his jacket. The boy hesitated, then took it. I'll be here tomorrow, he said. If you want another sandwich. The boy didn't answer. But he didn't run either. That was enough. That night, he lay in bed and thought of Jesus. Not the stained glass Jesus. But the real one. The one who walked with lepers, knelt in gardens, wept at graves. The one who didn't fix everything instantly, but stayed through the pain. I want to live like that, he whispered. Help me live like that. And God kept answering, not with thunder, but with small open doors. One day, the church held a gathering. Just 10 people in folding chairs. Thomas asked him to speak. He hesitated. Then stood. He didn't give a sermon. Just told the truth. About the war. About the rage. About the pain that nearly swallowed him. And the grace that pulled him back. He ended with a simple sentence. I thought the war made me strong. But it just made me numb. Jesus is the one who taught me how to feel again, and still stand. No applause. Just stillness. And tears. Later, Thomas clapped a hand on his shoulder. Welcome to ministry, he said, smiling. He laughed. That's not what I was trying to do. Thomas shrugged. That's how it always starts. He walked home under the stars that night. And for the first time in years, he wasn't afraid of the dark. Because now, he carried light. He kept showing up. Day after day. Not because he had to. Because something inside him had changed. The more he gave, the more he healed. And yet, healing is never a straight line. Sometimes it surprises you. Sometimes it tests you. It was a cold Wednesday morning when Thomas called. You should come down to the church. Someone's looking for you. He wasn't sure what to expect. But when he stepped into the sanctuary, his heart stopped. It was the boy. The one from the shelter door. He wasn't alone. There were 2 police officers standing nearby. The boy looked down, hands shaking. They think I stole something, he muttered. Thomas stood beside him, calm but quiet. The officers spoke. The store's camera footage was blurry, but someone matching the boy's description had been seen running off with a pair of shoes. New shoes. The same ones he had on. He didn't speak right away. Then he asked gently, "Did you take them?" The boy didn't answer. Didn't need to. His shoulders dropped. Guilt written all over his face. He stepped forward. Placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Whatever happened, I'll make it right," he said. The officers hesitated. One of them narrowed his eyes. "You sure about that?" "Yes." So they left. No cuffs. No shouting. Just a warning. A thin thread of mercy. When the door closed, the boy looked up at him. "Why'd you do that?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he said, "When I was your age, no one gave me a second chance. I want to be the person I needed back then." The boy's eyes filled with tears. He looked away, ashamed. "I didn't have socks," he whispered. That night, they went to the shelter together. A quiet dinner. He didn't lecture him. Didn't preach. He just stayed. That was the moment it all made sense. Peace wasn't an escape. It was a choice. A practice. A calling. 1,000 quiet decisions to stay when it's easier to walk away. To forgive when anger feels justified. To love, even when it costs you something. He began organizing small meetings at the church. Not sermons, conversations. Veterans. Recovering addicts. Single mothers. Lost kids. People like him. People who knew pain, and didn't want it to be the end of their story. One evening, after one of those gatherings, Thomas sat beside him on the steps. "You know," he said, "you're not the man I met that first night." He nodded. "I'm still figuring out who I am." "That's how you know it's real," Thomas said. "Because you're still learning. Still listening." He smiled. But something inside him felt heavy. A stirring. Later that week, he got a letter. From the Department of Defense. An old case had been reopened. A military operation he had been part of, something that had gone wrong. They were conducting reviews. Not criminal charges. But questions. Investigations. They wanted his statement. He stared at the letter for a long time. Part of him wanted to throw it away. Bury it. Pretend it was behind him. But he knew better. Healing demands truth. So he answered. Honestly. Fully. Not to protect himself, but to honor the men who didn't come home. And the civilians whose names he never knew. He told the truth. All of it. When he mailed the letter, his hands shook. But his heart was still. "God," he whispered, "if this costs me everything, let it be worth it." And somehow, he knew it would be. A few days later, he returned to the cemetery. Not for his father this time. Just to sit. To remember. To reflect. As he walked between the rows of stones, he saw a man kneeling at one of the graves. He looked familiar. The posture. The weight on his shoulders. Then he realized, it was one of his former commanders. They hadn't seen each other in years. He almost turned to leave. But something made him stop. The man looked up. Eyes met. They didn't speak. Not for a long time. Then the commander stood. Walked over. Said 2 words. "I'm sorry." He didn't ask for what. He didn't need to. He simply nodded. "Me too." They sat in the grass for over an hour. 2 men. 2 soldiers. 2 stories full of regret and grace. And when they parted, he felt lighter. As if another weight had fallen away. That night, he stood before a small group in the church. He didn't read scripture. Didn't prepare a speech. He just spoke from the heart. There are moments in life, he said, where you don't get to fix what was broken. You don't get to erase it. But you do get to choose what comes next. He looked out at the faces in the room. Some tired. Some scarred. All listening. And I choose peace. Not because it's easy. But because it's the only thing that ever changed me. Silence followed. And then, soft applause. Not loud. Just enough. As people began to leave, the boy from the shelter stood near the door. Still wearing the jacket. Still holding on. You really think someone like me can change? He asked. He smiled. I don't just think it, he said. I'm living proof. He sits in that same old church pew now. The wooden one, near the back. The one where it all began. Years have passed. His hair has thinned, his walk has slowed, but his eyes, those have changed the most. They're softer now. Lighter. No longer heavy with ghosts. Just full of memory. Full of grace. He looks around at the room. A few candles still flicker. The cross above the altar hasn't moved. The world outside is louder than ever. But in here, it's quiet. Sacred. He smiles faintly, thinking of all the things that tried to break him. War. Shame. Loss. But they didn't win. Because something else stepped in. Something stronger. Something gentler. Peace. Not the kind that comes from avoiding pain. The kind that walks with you through it. He leans forward a little, rests his elbows on his knees, and looks straight ahead. If you're listening to this, he says slowly, maybe you've been where I've been. Or maybe, you're still there. His voice isn't polished. It cracks a little. But it's real. I don't have a dramatic story to sell you. No sudden miracle. No perfect ending. What I have, is a journey. He pauses. A breath. A memory. I carried war in my chest long after I left the battlefield. I let it define me. I let it isolate me. I almost let it destroy me. He swallows hard. But then I met someone who didn't try to fix me. He just sat with me. And he handed me something I hadn't touched in years, a Bible. He reaches into his coat. Pulls out the same one. Old. Worn. Familiar. I didn't open it for a while. I wasn't ready. But when I did, the first verse I saw said, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. He holds it for a moment. That verse didn't change my circumstances. But it told me I wasn't alone. A long silence follows. Not awkward. Just honest. I used to think peace was weakness. That soft heart's got people killed. But I was wrong. He smiles faintly, looking down. Peace is power. It's not loud. It doesn't force its way in. It waits. It whispers. And when you finally stop running, it's there. He looks up again, this time as if straight into someone's soul. You don't have to be perfect to receive it. You just have to be open. Honest. Real. Another pause. I don't know what you're carrying right now. Guilt. Rage. Regret. Maybe all of it. His eyes grow glassy. I carried it too. But I gave it to someone bigger than me. He nods slightly toward the altar. Jesus didn't come to shame us. He came to sit beside us. To show us that pain isn't the end of the story. He closes the Bible gently. And neither is war. He leans back against the pew. Breathes in deep. Lets it out slow. Then, softly, start your day thanking God. Even if you don't feel thankful yet. Just try. Try saying, God, thank you for waking me up today. Thank you for not giving up on me. The light from the stained glass window warms his face. I don't know who needed to hear this. But if you're out there, peace is possible. Even for someone like you. Especially for someone like you. His voice softens, almost to a whisper. Don't run forever. He stands slowly, walking down the aisle, toward the back. Just before he reaches the door, he stops. Turns. And smiles. One last time. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God. Then he walks out. Into the light.